Okay, so thanks for joining our cryptocurrency and seasteading social. I'm going to start out with a poll just to get a sense of the knowledge level that everyone has around cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. So I'm going to launch that now. I'm seeing mostly somewhat knowledgeable, so that's good. Okay, we'll start out probably talking about just the basics and make sure we all understand the terms the same way. And then we can get into the discussion. You can ask more complicated questions. So our two special guests are John Kosanke and Mike Doty. Both are longtime seasteading supporters and also have worked on cryptocurrency projects. So let's see. I'm going to end the poll. A couple of you missed, but that's okay. So most people on the call are somewhat knowledgeable about cryptocurrency. Now, John or Mike, either one, would you just give a very basic definition of cryptocurrency and a definition of blockchain?
I guess I can go. When you think of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is the first thing that comes to mind. It's got the first mover advantage among different types of coins. Blockchain is what it's built on, which it keeps a record on a number of different computers of every transaction, timestamp. So any time somebody makes a purchase, it's recorded, and each block is built on a previous block, so they are finalized and verified. So it's a permanent record of all the transactions that go on that particular blockchain. It's the basic definition.
Okay, so I have heard Joe Quirk, our president of the Seasteading Institute, he has said that something along the lines of cryptocurrency is decentralization in the digital world, like decentralized, management. I'm not sure how else to explain it. It can be applied to many different tools, but then seasteading would be decentralization in the physical world. So would you agree with that statement? Does that ring true for you?
Yes, seasteading, one of the goals of seasteading is to not have a central government controlling, and gives you more ways of coming up with different types of governance. So it's decentralized forms of government. Yeah.
Mike, what do you think about that?
Yes, I can kind of add my vision of how cryptocurrency is I like the distributed ledger analogy. Basically, it's a common ledger of all the transactions and balances that is shared by a whole group of computers in a peer-to-peer network. So basically everyone using it, those that are securing the blockchain all agree on, or a majority of them agree on who has what and who has spent or sent what to other users of the system. As John said, it has some similarities to seasteading, that we have different blockchains all in coexistence, like kind of competing for users, sometimes cooperating, and they're bridged, connected through different means. We have exchanges, we have centralized exchanges, which are almost like banks or stock brokerage, and then we have decentralized exchange, also that's developing. I hope I answered your question or my take on it there.
Yes, and if anyone would like some more clarification or a similar question, you can put that in the chat, and we'll open it up to open discussion in a second. But feel free to use the chat to ask questions. So, as long as I've been involved with seasteading, which is not very long, but the Seasteading Institute has been working with cryptocurrency and has, you know, when I've heard from the previous executive director, Randy, when he would go to crypto conferences, he said the crypto people were the ones who really understood seasteading to begin with, right? Like he didn't have to do as much work to try to explain the concept or what the value add is. So I'm curious to hear what you all think about why that is. Like there's something there. There's a relationship between cryptocurrency and seasteading that, first of all, you know, funding seasteads through crypto seems like a possibility, but there's also this mindset that belongs to both communities. So what if you have an idea, what's the shared mindset? What's the shared value there?
Is this for us to answer? Who would you like to answer that?
Yes, go ahead.
One of the things that you can do on the blockchain is to create smart contracts where the contracts are executed automatically. You can have funding mechanisms for buying seasteads, cruise ships, whatever, different types of arrangements, and those can be done through the fundraising can be done in steps where the first group can be like putting together an interactive website where you can go in there and see what you're designing in the metaverse. You can actually go in there. You have some role-playing games like Decentraland. You have target, you go in there and you can see everything in 3D. That's one application. The governance, DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, where you can delegate decision making to different people, and this is all on a smart contract in the blockchain.
So it's a way so the way that cryptocurrency can take money management out of government bureaucracy, the blockchain can take out some of this, the consensus decision making needed to run a community. Blockchain can sort of take that out of the hands of a government and design it a different way. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have tokens. Each person you can buy tokens. You can be issued tokens, and those tokens can be used for voting yourself or for delegating votes. They can be used as currency. There's so many different ways that you can use the tokens. Basically, the cryptocurrencies are tokens.
Okay, so Mike, can you talk a bit about your ARC project, or if you want to add to that, please go right ahead.
Yeah, sure. So as an example, like with ARC, the idea is that it supports sovereign blockchains and it has voting. So token holders vote delegates who secure the blockchain instead of having like thousands of computers. On ARC itself, we have 51, but when you clone ARC to create a new chain, you can set up how many delegates you want, 5 or hundreds. So that's where it's similar to the idea of seasteading, where we can have separate seasteads and they're all like their own governments, their own entities. So that the idea is, having separate sovereign nations on the water. And it's sort of the idea of ARC, having these bridged, interconnected kind of a fractal network of separate but connected blockchains. As like Ben posted, when it comes to seasteading, a big application will be real estate and fractional mortgages. That instead of having a county clerk's office that holds the deed and records it, property titles and transfers can be recorded on the blockchain. You could have fractional ownership of real estate where multiple people hold tokens, or you could have a single NFT token that represents a particular property. and then that can be held by multiple parties, and then just dividends or payments for any profits made from that property can be distributed to the owners. Like if it's rented, that portions of the rent could be sent to, the different addresses for that token. Another thing is fractional mortgages. Say that we have a mortgage that's loaned out. It's like crowdfunded by a group of people, or even in a single entity, and then that mortgage can be resold in fractions as portions of that token for that mortgage. So those are a couple of items. And on top of the obvious use of currencies, each seastead or a group can have its own currency, or they can also be bound together by a common currency that ties together these kind of sub currencies for different, like, sovereign seasteads, nations.
And so, John, if you'll tell us a little bit about the work you did with the MS Satoshi and how you approached that. Now, how much was blockchain used in thinking about governing the Satoshi?
Can I plug a couple things here before I start? Here's my book. Oh, you can see the thing on there. Instead of Politics, Civilization 101. It's available online. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's basically shows why the state needs to be abolished, and how the marketplace will fill the void for all valuable services. I got another thing I want to plug here also. This is a project that I'm working on right now. It's called BitCheques, or in Spanish, BitCheques. These are modified paper wallets. They have the private key sealed inside. Each one has a unique serial number. You can see it there. And of course, each one, it's a unique key pair for holding your Bitcoin physically. You don't have to have a smartphone except to load it. So you can take your Bitcoin and you can load it to that address on the BitCheque, and you can keep it for as long as you want. It'll appreciate in value with Bitcoin. Cash it in 10, 20 years from now by putting it back on a digital wallet. You have to destroy, of course, the BitCheque to get to it. You open it up, and inside is the private key. So that's a project I'm working on right now with a gentleman down in El Salvador. We're kind of going off topic here a little bit, but it's still Bitcoin. The president of El Salvador has made pretty much declared his cabinet, his judiciary, his legislature has declared Bitcoin to be legal tender, and he is giving $30 worth of Bitcoin to every citizen who downloads his app called the Chivo app. But about half of the people of El Salvador don't have smartphones, so these would come in real handy for them, where they can have someone download a Chivo wallet to their phone, and then download that money to a BitCheque, and then they can have access to it. They can use it like currency, pass it back and forth from one person to another, or hold on to it in a safe place and cash in later on. Those are the two. That's the project I'm working on right now. Comes up there. All right, is it there? Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So yeah, that's my book there. The first link. You probably don't see my cursor, or do you?
Oh, no, we see your cursor.
Okay, good. That's the address to bitcheques.com. You can actually also go there if you scan the small QR code on the BitCheque. Will take you to that website. No, I don't want to go there. So I got started with the Free Nation Free Nation movement at this website here. You can I think later on you'll be able to click on these links and you can go to these sites, but the Free Nation Foundation was about the year 2000. I kind of discovered them, and that was about the time they were fizzling out, but there's a lot of good information there about different types of constitutions, governance structures for free nations, including seasteads. The Freedom Ship project, if you go to this link here, there's a nice little video and a kind of a review of that project. I did. I think Mike told me that he did actually a flyover used in that video, or the original video that was a part of the documentary for the Discovery Channel. This is the more recent design, the Coordinador design from Coordinador in India, who's still working on trying to get funds for that project. So I spoke with Roger Gooch, and we had a conference kind of similar to this, where we had discussed the idea of using crypto as a finance mechanism for the Freedom Ship. And if you click on that document, you can see the plan that I had devised. Roger wasn't really too fond of the idea because he was more in favor of a traditional IPO instead of an ICO, but that shows the tiered method of funding for a super large, basically a city on the water that travels around the world. I don't know how many of the people in this audience are familiar with the Freedom Ship, but it was pretty big at one time. And then this document here for the Satoshi, this was a document that me and Chad hammered out for the purchase of cabins on the MS Satoshi. And it was basically based on Spencer McCallum's lease for Orbis, which was one of the documents on the Free Nation org. If you go to that link, you can see a number of different types of governance structures.
That's great, John. Can you share those links in the chat? Can you copy those and share them in the chat? And then I'd like to open it up for discussion with everyone now. So the first question we have from John Green: does crypto foresee a world of commerce and manufacturers, regular administration of justice, security in the possession of property such as Adam Smith held, essential to a flourishing state? So that is an open question for anyone, and let's have it. You feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions or participate in the conversation. And thank you, John and Mike, for getting us started.
All of the above.
What's that?
All of the above, yes. But it's not. So you have to design a smart contract. You can get a smart contract to do basically whatever you want it to automatically. One of the things about smart contracts that's really valuable is the where you, what's the word for it, where you put up, okay, the buyer and the seller both put up a certain amount, and you can have, it's a
Escrow.
Escrow. There you go. Two out of three signatures needed to be able to take that money out of that particular budget. So that if you, for example, you buy a product, you put in some Bitcoin or whatever crypto, And the seller also puts in some crypto, and if the buyer is satisfied, he allows that crypto to be released, that escrow to be released, and you can have an arbitrator come in too if neither the buyer or the seller are satisfied, or the seller thinks that he that gave a good product and the buyer doesn't. Then you can get a third party in there, an arbitrator, to make a decision on whether or who should get how much of that fund. So there's so many different ways that you can put together a smart contract. Solidity is the language of the Ethereum blockchain, which is based on a very common language. What's the name of that?
I think of JavaScript.
JavaScript, based on JavaScript. And it's very similar to JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, you can easily write smart contracts on the Solidity platform for the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum is the blockchain that has the majority of coins in circulation today, and smart contracts. So it's kind of the de facto. Right now, Bitcoin can also do smart contracts. They just had an update with the root. Somebody in the audience knows.
There's a rootstock.
Taproot. They did the Taproot update.
Taproot.
Where it makes it a lot more scalable, and it makes smart contracts a lot more easier to write and to accomplish on the Bitcoin blockchain. So yeah.
Well, there is a competition of all the currency today on the market. So you can use US dollar, you can use Bitcoin, but I believe there should be a debate, a competition in ideas. Let's put all these coins together, all the suggestions, and we have debate on what is the most appropriate currency. Okay, some people obviously will propose gold, the gold standard. And our company also propose a universal permanent money, integer gold, another gold in the form of integer and the packed gold. So you people can have all kind of ideas, so this is going on. Discussion doesn't mean anything. Okay, the competition on the market is everything. And we can fortify that by have some theory to go with the experiment they're doing, the social experiment they're doing. This is what I feel the Seasteading group should somebody should organize. I guess Carly might.
Well, I'll
organize that. So let's see how many suggestions we have.
I mean, I'll just say the benefit of seasteading and cryptocurrency is that you don't have to choose just one, right? You can use the different cryptocurrencies for different purposes, just like seasteads can form different kinds of communities, and you can live in the community that works best for you at that time of your life, right? Like even at different stages in our lives, we might need a different kind of community to be a part of. And so, that's kind of what I see for the future of seasteading, is that not just that people will choose different communities, but they don't have to stay in those communities, right? And that's the great benefit of it. But I do see a lot of conversation in the chat. Toby, did you want to unmute yourself and add a comment?
Hi, you mean against gold, or?
If you would like to say something, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say we tried gold and it only worked by not using it directly, but having recipes, which ultimately turned into money, into fiat money. So we already gave it a chance. And if we are again just putting the gold away and trade IOUs of that gold, we are not a step forwards, but just backwards.
It's kind of the point of having cryptocurrencies, is that you can choose between one and another. You don't have a monopoly on fiat, which you have in every nation today where you have to use that currency. You can't buy a car with a cryptocurrency or even gold anymore. So if you have that choice, if you have a competition, anytime you have competition, you have improvement because people are wanting to put out their product so that that's attractive to the buyers.
I wanted to bring up, because I saw reference to Adam Smith being made. And one of the things Adam Smith was big on was something called real bills of exchange. And cryptocurrency is ideally suited for that. We go back to a bills of exchange type system. That's kind of where you're issuing tokens basically against future products or services in a crowd fund. And those tokens are then redeemable for that product or service. And that's very similar to how real bills operated. But with crypto, it can even be more flexible. Instead of being a fixed 90-day period, that those bills become due or are redeemed, liquidated. Now we can have different time spans, and with blockchain, we can also validate and know for sure how many of those real bills have been issued by a particular vendor. So you can know if someone is over issuing more than they could ever realistically redeem, then that will show up immediately. Whereas it used to be in the old days, you were kind of trusting the issuer of the real bills not to issue too many that they could never honor. So
yeah, that's fiat currency right now. They're printing out dollars like they're going out of style. So the higher supply that you have of the currency, the lower its value. So that's what inflation is basically. So Bitcoin, for example, has a fixed amount of currency that will ever be minted, and there's no way, it's all written in code. There's no way that can be changed. So it can't be inflated. You cannot inflate Bitcoin, and many of the alt coins are also written that way.
I'll put like somewhat of a contrarian opinion out there. I mean, I like the concept of crypto. I really do. I want it to work. But what I see is a lot of hype, a lot of speculation, a lot of these esoteric things like smart contracts, but not a lot of actually being used as a currency. How many people on this call have used cryptocurrency to buy a loaf of bread or fill their tank with gas or do any of the daily transactions? And I guess the question I'd ask is, why is that not happening yet? And what would it take for that to happen? Because until that happens, I mean, it could be a good moneymaker, it could be a novelty, but it'll just be kind of a novelty until you can actually use it for your daily transactions in some way, shape, or form. So I guess I put it out to there. Is anyone actually doing that? And if not, why not? And what would it take for you to do that? Because I think that's kind of the starting point for what it would take to also do the same thing.
Sovereign nations don't like competition, and so they're doing what they can, especially China right now, to prevent the circulation of alternate currencies. But right now, El Salvador has declared Bitcoin to be legal tender. So they're actually getting help from the government of El Salvador. They are issuing $30 in Bitcoin to every citizen who downloads the Chivo app, which is a state wallet, but they can get that $30 in Bitcoin. They can keep it in their Chivo wallet. They can put it in another wallet. Every business in El Salvador right now is required, if they're technologically capable, they're required to accept Bitcoin as payment.
Can we get Chris to unmute himself and talk more about his lifestyle? Because he just wrote in the chat that he actually does what I'm asking about. So I'm very curious how that works for him and how he sees it and how it compares to what he did previously.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of doing two things at once. Yeah, I've been a developer in the Bitcoin Cash space for the last 3 years, and I have I'm now a freelance developer, and I only allow my clients to pay me in Bitcoin Cash. I've fired clients in the past who didn't want to do that. And I buy gift cards for my local grocery store with the cryptocurrency. I can get Amazon store credit with cryptocurrency. So I live exclusively on cryptocurrency. I try to use the US dollar as little as possible.
And how does that work out? Like, what conveniences have you lost? I mean, obviously you've gained some privacy. Like, well, what would stop more people from adopting it, do you think?
It's just clunky. It's technically difficult. There's a big learning curve. Bitcoin Cash can be anonymized using a program called Cash Fusion, and so I anonymize every cryptocurrency that comes through my hands is anonymized. So there's no tie to when I spend it to my government ID, and I just do that. I'm not trying to hide anything. I just want my privacy the same way I want to shut a door when I go to the bathroom. So that's just how I operate. I had to train myself. No one taught me how to do these things. I had to teach myself. And that's, I think, the biggest impediment to people using it like I use it right now.
You can all use BitCheques. Use a BitCheck. You can use it like cash, pass it from one person to another. You can save it, especially in El Salvador. It's more common or likely that you can use this type of a thing. You don't have to have a smartphone. You just use your BitCheque.
I think you're right in saying it's clunky and there's a big learning curve.
Not for the BitCheque. You just load it up with that on that QR code. You write your amount right there on the little blue box there. You write the amount of satoshis in there, and it's right there. You don't need a smartphone or anything until you want to cash it in or put it in a crypto wallet again.
I mean, to me, the BitCheque just sounds like, a fiat for crypto, essentially, or like an IOU for crypto in the same way that you had that for gold. So maybe I'm missing something, but you don't get the real-time verification, right?
If you hold gold, you have that gold. You can spend it. It has its value. Sure, the value fluctuates up and down, but it's a store of value. And as I had mentioned earlier, Bitcoin, it has a fixed amount of Bitcoin. So there's really no comparison. It looks kind of like a dollar bill, but it's completely different.
So James Green put in the chat, does Bitcoin forever commit you to being tied to mobile technology, a 5 or 6G network, and an internet of body?
No, I don't do any kind of crypto on mobile. I do everything strictly by desktop, by choice. You have the option to use mobile if you want to, but you don't have to. I also wanted to add to that, personally, I find doing a Bitcoin or other crypto transaction a lot easier than using a credit card. Because credit card, you have to fill out name and address and all this other information. When you send Bitcoin to pay for something, all you have to do is copy the destination address and the amount and paste that into your wallet and hit send. Much easier than dealing with the credit cards. Plus, to set up to take Bitcoin and hold an account is much easier. You download and install a wallet, and you create an address, and to receive payment, you just send someone that address and the amount. You don't have to fill out all kinds of paperwork or anything. So also, as far as spending Bitcoin, there are other options. There's purse.io is an option that they buy things for you on Amazon. So they, if you go there, it explains it, but basically you even get discounts depending on how long you're willing to wait for them to ship you things. And they accept Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin. And then Travala is a travel site, Travala. And they take crypto directly, a lot of different coins for travel, both hotels and flights and activities at your destination. And then Cheap Air also takes Bitcoin as payment for traveling. Yeah, there's places to pay for it directly, and then there's also others that you go through a third party.
Any kind of online purchase is basically just as easy as using a credit card.
Yeah, the only time it becomes more cumbersome and difficult is if the vendor doesn't accept it directly. You have to go through some intermediary service, whether it's buying gift cards or like First.io, that you go through a buyer essentially that buys things for you. converting your crypto into fiat when they make the purchase.
There's something
Mason,
that
I'm
can-
curious if your reservations have been answered. Like, I mean, it seems to me that the main response is we need more people to adopt and accept cryptocurrency, and then more people will be able to use it for those day-to-day transactions. Is that a sufficient answer, or do you think there's something more that needs to be said or done?
I mean, it is the technically correct answer. A lot of times the theory is simple, but the practice is hard. So I mean, it's like, you know, how do you do well on a test? Well, you study and you learn the material, and then you do well on tests. But it doesn't actually help it happen, right? So, I mean, I guess even as a seasteading community, how would you start? You just, yeah. I mean, like I said, Chris is obviously quite committed to it, and I would expect, maybe I'm wrong, Chris, but I assume you're taking like a 5 or 10%, you know, like margin to use all these services with all the fees and the steps and the processing that are incurred, or am I wrong on that? Like, I assume it's like a financial loss to do this, but it's a philosophical gain. Is that correct currently?
Yeah, it's
Not for
between 1% and 5% is what you'll pay when you convert from one crypto to another. I try to just maintain a balance of several different cryptos. I mean, just like a stock portfolio, diversity is important. And that allows me to, you know, just kind of be more fluid. I can kind of be my own exchange that way.
Also, First.io, you actually save money. You get a discount over the Amazon price, because what they're doing is people that have gift cards that they want to sell for a discount, convert into fiat or Bitcoin, will actually, they actually typically get about 15% off whatever the price is on Amazon. Although
Okay.
First.io charges a fee as well for their service, but it's still probably around 10%.
Let me rephrase it, because I think Carly's kind of stimulated me to put this in a better way. I'm 100% with you guys on this philosophically, but convince me as the average Joe Schmo who has a credit card with a bank that gives me 1% to 2% rewards. It works on Amazon. It works everywhere. I enter my numbers and things get delivered, and I pay for my paycheck to there. It's very simple. Convince me, other than philosophically, how do we practically make cryptocurrency useful to people, or are we only going to get it to the diehard crypto users? Because if we do that, it's going to really limit the applicability of it, right? So how do we get the average person who doesn't care whatsoever about Liberty, doesn't care about seasteading? How do we get crypto to be the default rather than the alternative?
Crypto is becoming more and more popular, and so it's just really a question of time. Since Bitcoin, for example, is it's going up, and the dollar's going down, so it's a better value for people who hold it. But as far as spending it, is the more of Bitcoin there is, the more people are going to be using it.
So actually, I think your argument is just against exactly what I've said, because if you and Chris in the chat are saying that, you know, it's going up in price, so I own crypto, right? So it's going up in price. I know that. Why would I spend crypto when I can use my credit card, earn rewards, and then keep my crypto instead of paying transaction fees again to buy more and then use it, and then knowing that it will go up in value if I hold it, right? Like, good money is going to chase out bad money, and people are going to hoard the good money and spend the bad money. So how do you get people to start spending the good money?
So I would say it will probably one good chance for it to succeed is to start with new use cases that were not possible before with, for example, PayPal. One example would be a video streaming platform where you do not have to register and make an account, and you can just pay as you go and pay per second. So you never have to pay more than you actually want to consume. So no account, you don't have to register, you don't have to put your email in, and you can just pay, let's say, 0.1 cent per second.
Also, escrow, we talked about that a little bit. You can do that with, you don't have to rely on the reputation of the buyer or seller. You don't have to know anything about the buyer or seller or the product, because if that money's in escrow, until you're completely satisfied with your purchase, you don't release those funds. You can't do that. You can do something similar to that on eBay, but you're relying more on the reputation of the seller.
The killer app that's equivalent of Google hasn't been developed yet, and when it is, and it uses a credit card, then everyone will go to it.
I just see this as evolving. It's like the internet. It started out as text, and it was, you know, mostly a geek kind of thing, and it just kept gaining more popularity as more developed. Then we had Mozilla and image-based websites, and then we had a lot more functionality get added. And that it hit critical mass, and the masses came in. So I don't really see, no one really market internet or the World Wide Web. It grew organically, and that's why I see crypto is that it's growing organically, and as it's reaching the critical mass now, that pretty soon a lot of places will take Bitcoin and other crypto directly rather than having to be convinced to do so.
Albert, please go ahead.
Yeah, the common divisor to me doesn't seem to be an economic kind of motivation. I think it's probably more an related concept, in the sense that if we were to turn off all of our computers right now by some sort of blackout, you would still have all those necessary business functions or everyday tasks that you need to complete. And in that scenario, Bitcoin wouldn't be useful, or any other cryptocurrency. But if those exchanges or those tasks were backed up by some sort of energy requirement, then it might motivate people to think more on what their everyday needs are, right? So you can reduce any problem, whether it's a meal on a plate or driving to a certain location, into an energy cost. And we normally call that cost gas cost, or let's say carbon cost or something like that. But it seems that there's a physics kind of way that you could solve the problem. Does that make sense to you, Chris?
Seems like we lost Chris.
Yeah, sorry guys, I got lost there. I think that everyone needs to make their own decision. Like, crypto's not any one thing. We're still very much, like, for hundreds of years we thought we knew what money was, and it's clear that we don't. That's really the only conclusion I can draw.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
There's a lot more to crypto too than just payments. And in fact, on Seastead, I expect payments will be a fairly minimal role for it. We get into the much larger things as far as registering deeds, titles, property, fractional real estate and mortgages, or like if we're doing a type of a timeshare system, then we can have NFTs down to the actual particular day that you want to stay, so that when you're leasing out a place, that you're actually buying it by the day on an open market. It's sort of a decentralized Airbnb approach to things. We can even have Internet of Things where the locks on the units, the rental units, or access to the Seasteads are tied to the blockchain, so that you open it basically with your wallet when you want to go stay at the place. And we use smart contracts to hold your deposits, so that if there's damage or something, then you can go through an escrow to be arbitrated as far as getting your deposits back if the owner doesn't agree to it.
So Mike, on the topic of seasteading, would it make sense to use fish as a currency? Just as a thought experiment.
Yeah, Andreas Antonopoulos, in his book, The Internet of Money, and by the way, for a primer on crypto, that's the best book I've seen. That's what I would hand to family members, really, that it explains it. That's how he sees it. Yes, I see any kind of commodity, product, or service can be represented as a token. That's getting back to sort of the real bills analogy that I mentioned earlier, is that, yeah, if you're a fisherman, you can pre-sell tokens that are redeemable for pounds of fish, and at a discount, say, that can then fund your operation. Say you want to get a larger boat or expand your fleet, then another token sale to raise the capital to expand your fleet. They go out and actually capture the fish to have it on hand inventory to redeem for those tokens. And the buyers of those tokens say they buy at a discount, and then they can resell them on an open exchange. So they're paying 80 cents on the dollar for your pound of fish. They could resell it for 90 cents on the dollar to someone else who would later redeem it. So yeah, very much so. Any kind of product looking into processing sargassum seaweed for a number of products.
And any good or service can be represented in terms of tokens.
So Dwayne, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, in response to a question that was asked a long time ago, my hand's been up for quite a while. My former employer, Google, it was adapted very late in the internet process and as a killer app for the internet. And we are, for cryptos, we're at a very early stage, and the killer app has not been developed yet. That will be as easy as the guy asked earlier, as a credit card. Right now, everything is way too cumbersome for grandma to use, or grandpa. And we are at Einsoft, EIN as in Einstein, SOPH as in software.com. We are developing that, and I'm sure there's millions of others developing that. That will be very simple and everyone will use. So we're not there yet. And the killer apps do not represent, or do not resemble in any way whatsoever the existing systems, which are far too cumbersome. And they're even changing the underlying structure, rewriting everything that Satoshi wrote, starting from Rasa. So the new systems will not in any way resemble what the primitive systems we're using now. We're using, I don't know, something like the scientists used with early internet. That's where we are now.
Well, and to kind of probe that a little bit more, you don't have to give away details, but I guess the way I kind of envision it, and I wonder if this is the way you see it too, that the actual crypto and the blockchain itself, I mean, I'm personal to Monero, but call it Bitcoin or whichever one else, will be for big transactions. But then I think you almost need something like a credit card where you put aside a certain amount of money on a network that doesn't necessarily use the blockchain for those instantaneous small transactions where you really don't care as much about the security of it. And you could just have, you know, I mean, like put like a slush fund of $1,000 on your card, and let's say Visa runs it, and everyone has a card that's got $1,000 on it. I tap, I give you 5, you give me 10, I give Chris 6, and we just keep that kind of floating balance for a small amount, but your true valuables, your net worth, your house, your big purchases are made on the actual blockchain, where maybe it takes 5-10 minutes to confirm, but who cares, because it's a $100,000 transaction. Is that kind of how you envision it, or are you envisioning an entire new currency?
Well, on that aspect, yes, it's exactly the same. It's on a credit card, but it's not an electromagnetic card. It's a laser card that stores massive amounts compared to a normal electromagnetic card. And so it's a blockchain on a card, and that you carry around with your personal blockchain on a card. And that's just one aspect of it. The other aspects are at, imagine you've got all the cryptos down here. There's millions of them, Joe's coins, Steve's coins, Barbara's coin. They're all down at a lower level. And then above that, you've got, you know, the blockchain platform. And then above that, you will have the killer app that will be the platform above all platforms. And that's being developed by lots of people right now, including us.
I guess to kind of circle back to seasteading, does anyone see seasteading using a fiat currency? Maybe this is like a moot point, but does anyone see that? I mean, does anyone envision that? I mean, I think everyone kind of is on board with crypto. We don't know how it'll work, but is there anyone who has an argument to say why we should use US dollars or euros or, you know, whatever on the Seastead rather than a decentralized digital currency?
Well, at this stage, I'll say it doesn't make a lot of sense to like. I think a great benefit to seasteading is that the cryptocurrency makes international payments so much quicker. Like for example, the Seasteading Institute was helping to sponsor an event in Europe, and when I thought about paying the invoice for the sponsorship, you know, scheduling a wire transfer through my bank, having to pay the fees and the cost for switching from one currency to another. It was just extremely complicated. I just sent Bitcoin instead, so much easier. So, and because, you know, we see these projects of collaboration across many different borders, it just doesn't make sense to stick with one fiat currency, because it's just so much easier just to like coordinate with people in other countries and pay them with cryptocurrency. So that's what we'll do. And I see Chris has his hand up, so go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I like what you said, and I'll echo it in that if you look at what El Salvador is doing right now, they are essentially acting as an exchange for their citizens. Both the dollar and Bitcoin's legal tender, and they create a very low friction experience for the citizens using the Chivo app to switch between the two. And I think a Seastead will have to provide that same type of service where you'll need reserves in fiat, but by the time there's actual Seasteads, the cryptocurrency experience will be so superior. It just wouldn't make sense to use, I think, fiat currency at that point as like a day-to-day money in that type of environment. And
the citizens of the communities should have their own choice in currency. If they want to use a dollar, it's perfectly fine. They can go ahead and do that. But instead of having a centralized, monopolized currency, including any of the Bitcoin or any of the other alternate currencies, they should have that choice. In my Seastead, I would give them that choice.
Absolutely. Okay, I think this may be the moment. So Ben Silon asked a question a long time ago. I've been sitting on it because I didn't want to talk about this yet, but I think we can transition to, can someone explain DAO a bit and what it would look like for seasteading?
Okay, distributed autonomous organization is a smart contract organization. So the organization be set up on a smart contract. You can have majority voting. You can have voting on certain projects. Money, the coins, the tokens can go into whatever project you like, and you can vote with your tokens. If you have more tokens, you can put them into this project or that project. There's a million different ways you can organize a DAO for a organizational structure.
And do you have any follow-up question on that, or
just on the topic of DAOs, I am actually founded a DAO of my own, and I've been following Shapeshift DAO very closely, which is probably one of the biggest, most in vogue DAOs at the moment. And so Shapeshift, they have a product, and it's for exchanging cryptocurrencies, and they were a centralized company based in Colorado, and they have dissolved their corporate structure, and they are now a fully decentralized organization. And as a result of that, they can employ anyone in the world because they're not actually employing them. It's a totally voluntarily thing, which was a big problem. They don't have one particular jurisdiction, and they don't have a CEO anymore. So a lot of those sort of regulatory threats are different. I don't know if I'd go out and say less, but they're different. Yeah, DAOs are very flexible, and I think that just like NFTs were kind of the meme of 2021, I think DAOs are going to be the meme of 2022. And I think the most likely way a Seastead would be funded, like the actual creation of it, would probably be through a DAO. I'm kind of expecting that's how this is going to play out. I can imagine a company, maybe an international conglomerate that wants to do some sort of high-tech medical procedures, just like they do right now with cruise ships. And that would make sense for them to form a DAO and start and essentially launch a Seastead that way. It's kind of hand wavy there, but I don't know if anybody can say anything definite on DAOs other than just keep watching them. They're in a period of rapid evolution right now.
I just put a link on there to the document that I had for I added in the previous one, but that's a funding mechanism for my version of the Freedom Ship, Civilization 1. You can check out that link. It's got tiered financing. It's got different types of governance for different areas of the ship, the vessel. So check that one out.
And Chris, just back to your point, can you, I'm a newbie on DAOs, explain a little bit more to me. I can fathom how a DAO works with a company where all the question is basically who gets what money for what work and when have they completed it. When you actually have to make a decision like, you know, steer vessel right or left, or, you know, something that actually has like some physical action in the world aside from just reassigning crypto from wallet to wallet, how does that decision actually get enforced by the DAO? Like, do you have officers of a DAO that are then held responsible to carry out its actions? Like, how do you envision that working?
You can delegate your vote to a certain person. You can there's a number of different ways. You can have a specific function. The function can be decided how the decision is made, which way, when you turn which way. If you can get into as much detail as you want, but you typically delegate that responsibility to a certain person or a certain group.
Yeah, and what I would add is that generally DAO is a really very wide general term. So I think you're asking really specific questions about what a DAO does, but it's not really answerable because it can be anything. It really depends on what you implement that you want it to do. So some DAOs could work like a normal company with shares and shareholders, just that it's on the blockchain and people can use their shares to vote, and these votes could influence, for example, a door that you have in an office building. You could have the door listen to the Ethereum blockchain, and then if a vote is made, there's a majority vote of the shareholders, the door could, for example, open.
So I think that with that particular question, it highlights an area of innovation that I think Shapeshift has brought to the DAO space. Prior to Shapeshift and MakerDAO, there had never been a centralized company that had dissolved and become a DAO. It had always been just the other way, DAOs to centralized companies, but never the other way. And so in essence, in terms of what smart contracts do when people talk about DAOs, is it's really automating the business administration side of things. So there's a vote, and when the vote happens, it would involve some type of currency or token. And once the vote happens, the smart contract behind the DAO fulfills the business administrative side of things of moving that money around, and nobody can stop it. And that's essentially what DAOs did prior to Shapeshift. What Shapeshift added to that component, they still have this smart contracts running the business administrative and treasury side of things. But what they added to that mix, and because they needed to as a company that was now becoming a DAO, they had business operations, and they had marketing, and they had QA, and they had engineering departments, and they needed to fit all those conventional ideas into a new paradigm. And so they developed this idea of work streams. So when they vote on budgets at a high level. They vote on budgets, and these work stream leaders, somebody stands up and says, I want to be the head of engineering. I want, $1 million for the next year. And so everybody votes on that, and they either get it or they don't. And then once that year budget runs out, there's a period of accountability. They get to go to the rest of the community and say, hey, I'm awesome because I achieved all these things, or hey, we hit these problems, and so we didn't achieve what we wanted. And so if the community doesn't like what they did, they get fired by essentially not being funded again. And so to bring us back around to that question of how does it apply to seasteads, like if you're driving a boat or something, it wouldn't be so much that people would vote on every direction the boat took. It's that the community would vote on electing the best captain of the ship. And then periodically on a quarterly or yearly basis, there would be a feedback loop for accountability so that the community can fire that person if they're not doing a good job. And so that's essentially how Shapeshift works.
So, I mean, if I'm understanding correctly, you're basically saying you're using smart contracts to function as the board of directors and the shareholders, but the actual employees in the organization still function as executives that are appointed and usually carry out the day-to-day tasks of the company. Then they're just held accountable by this process instead of by a traditional paper or electronic ballot. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the token holders essentially become the board of directors. who execute their will through voting. And then the work stream leaders are, you could kind of consider them middle managers, and they're sort of autonomous in that they assemble the actual people who do the work and do the planning. But then ultimately that work stream leader is answerable to the greater community or that board of directors.
And another question about that, in legal jurisdictions, how does this shake out? Like, I mean, I love the idea. Realistically, let's say I sign up as this, I become one of these, work stream directors, and I carry out some action. Well, what's my legal liability? What's my exposure, right? Like with a corporation, you have that limited liability. With a DAO, how does that work when you actually enter sovereign jurisdiction? Can a DAO, yeah.
That remains to be seen. That's part of the experiment. There is no CEO to go after. So the governments, if they wanted to punish somebody, they'd have to go after the individuals, which is typically not what governments do. And they're typically very bad at that. It's not that they can't do it, but I think that's part of what we're going to see play out over the next couple of years. It's just never been challenged that way. Everything's too new.
And then on the same token, is there like the Monero equivalent of a DAO where you can be a completely anonymous and untraceable set of owners who are basically just acting, and then a plausible deniability that wasn't actually you that made those decisions and wasn't actually you that owns this?
Yes, you can. Because Ethereum, for example, you can write general programs, and so you can use zero-knowledge proof technology to construct completely anonymous autonomous organizations.
And you can still build up a reputation, although you're anonymous, by just staying with that identity.
So Hugh, you've had your hand up, so go ahead and ask your question, and you're muted now, so be sure to unmute.
Okay, well, there's a logical question regarding this crypto. So I like to go back to this because you're going to this thing which involve lots of other mechanics. But go back to this question. Right now, only Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a government. Okay, now there's no government uses digital currency. So once all the governments start to use digital currency, some even give there's advantage, digital advantage in crypto. Okay, there's advantage in blockchain. Okay, I admit that. But once the government go back, also compete with the same advantage as Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin cannot win. Bitcoin is going down to zero. That's my logical conclusion. Okay, anybody who should argue on this point to see how would the Bitcoin survive? Bitcoin is good. Crypto, criminals, they can use it. And also people who want to avoid government, they can use it. I agree. I think this is great, but this is an invention. It's new. Right now, government are not going into that, but I think sooner or later the government we're going to. That's why I raised the question. We need to look at this point of currency from a very fundamental point of view.
So Bitcoin will never go to zero because I make a pledge when it goes to 0.01 cent, I will buy all of them.
You will buy all of it, but government, they got the same thing. They have goods and services backing up all this the currency. Fiat currency, sure, they print as much as they want, but fiat currency right now cannot compete with the advantage of digital currency. And crypto is actually a big advantage. That's why people use it. Eventually this, government, if government, only China is trying using digital. Well, if they are successful, if some country, they also come up with a Bitcoin backed by a country, they got money, they got the goods and services backing it up. I think the stable currency will come out, and that alone, that will give Bitcoin some competition. And eventually government, they know they all turn to digital.
So Dwayne, did you have a response to you? And then did you want to make a
quite a few responses. If we don't develop a system China will. China's way ahead of us on the government adopting the crypto. So if we don't do it, they will, and they'll have the power in the world. On the DAO shape shifting, so we're back to we'll have to do it. We'll have to. The genie's out of the bottle. You can't put it back. It may not be Bitcoin, but you can't put the genie back. On the DAO, shape shifting has been way ahead on that for a long time. However, the future of DAO will probably be organizations run entirely by code, 100%. So there's no leadership, no individuals to go after, nobody. There will be participants that invest in these autonomous organizations, but I see that's where DAOs will end up eventually. So I believe we need a warm standby for civilization itself, to quote Patrick Burns, and that will have to be crypto. Otherwise, when the currencies collapse, I witnessed 2 currency collapses in my life. One was I was literally on the ground in Russia in 95, 96 when they shot their White House full of tanks, the White House full of holes with tanks, and you couldn't get a loaf of bread on the shelf. I was there on the ground when that happened. You know, when they say best investments is when there's blood in the streets, and there was literally blood in the streets. And I witnessed the currency collapse in Argentina that was around 2000, where they lost 77 times their money. Well, guess what? Right now, we are at the same point. I'm predicting that we're really close to that now with the dollar, and it's going to collapse. And if you witness one of these on the ground like I have, you need a warm standby for civilization itself. And if we don't do it, China will. That's my point.
Bitcoin's market cap right now is that $1 trillion. It's going to be around a while.
So, so Thomas brings up a good question. Why does any of this matter at the current stage of seasteading? Outside of funding, perhaps talking about DAO governance when there are next to no actual projects in the water. Is this like putting the cart before the horse? So I'm going to give my answer, then open it up. I don't think it's putting the cart before the horse. I think in order to attract investors and interest in seastead projects, we do have to answer their questions about how conflicts will be resolved when they are on a seasteading community, right? So I think it's important to offer that picture to people in order to sell the concept and then actually sell the physical seastead platforms. And anyone else, please feel free to address that.
Yeah, I think Christopher made a really good point. We need so much infrastructure that so many services governments currently give us. We can do that with crypto too. And I think a really underrepresented topic in crypto is reputation. And I think that with blockchain technology, you can build really good reputation systems, which would be crucial in governing seastead society, I think, a leaderless seastead society.
I'm gonna build on Dwayne's point because it's kind of where I was heading with things. And I would say that it is absolutely critical because I'm highly skeptical that any government will permit a corporation to, do what we want to do on a seastead. And as an individual, I'm not ready to, be personally individually liable. But if we can create a method by which I can, buy some Monero and have a wallet that is no way linked to me, and we all pool it together, and we have an organization that is completely autonomously run by code, and we are all we all have plausible deniability in its operation, then we can just go ahead and do something and essentially be insulated from the consequences of that, and essentially make the organization itself also untouchable by governments because it will just operate based on math, and it doesn't matter what government court says what or what issues what kind of injunction. If the organization is coded and it's hard-coded math doesn't care what your court says. And if there's no individual that it can be tied back to, then it will just keep going. So I think that's really the foundation of true independence.
I agree with that. This is a good idea because every country back it up. In the seasteading, we have a community. We should form a country. Okay. You know, so we're like country. We can back it up whatever we promise. We issue some money and we say, okay, we back it up. You know, but the Bitcoin has no backing. You know, so people need to think about this. You know.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think in terms of applying this to seasteads, any actual construction of a seastead is going to require a significant capital outlay. So I'm really glad that the Seasteading Institute's hosting this meeting because there are examples, you know, not many, but there's a handful that we can point to, like the recent Bitcoin bond in El Salvador, which did not involve any governments and raised $1 billion. And then, you know, there's not the best examples, but all the ICOs of 2017, you know, there are a few legitimate projects that came out of that, like Filecoin. And so there are examples of these alternative ways of raising capital for the kind of massive capital outlay that's going to be required to build a seastead. And this is also, I just want to underscore these ideas behind accountability and reputation. I'm really fascinated by different ways that these high-level concepts are being implemented in the cryptocurrency space. And that's why I think what Shapeshift did is so novel, in that most of their, I'm not going to call them employees, most of their work stream leaders, they have an identity, and there's value and persistence in that identity, but it's not tied to their government ID. I don't know who these people are in real life. I don't need to. They can be held accountable, and we can work together, and they are experts in their field, and there's no need for a government identity in that scenario. And so these work streams, or this work stream idea that they pioneered, is really innovative because it allows for accountability and reputation in a decentralized way. And it sort of strikes this nice balance between the sort of decentralized high-level voting of the token holders, the ability to raise funding and have a treasury with the tokens, and then have this sort of vertical tiers of work streams with work stream leaders that are held accountable. I think it's just a beautiful thing. I think it's a wonderful model for the Seasteading Institute to look at replicating.
Thank you. Yes, Matthias, go ahead.
Yes, I would also think in this direction, and I think the most asset of Bitcoin at this moment is the huge amount of very intelligent, open-minded people who keep it and who program it, and who keep the technology independent from this, I say, a little bit stupid governments who don't know to care for the people. And imagine if a big amount of people transfer their wealth to Bitcoin, then probably in 2 weeks, 20 or 100 states are bankruptcy. And imagine what happens. So I think the power of Bitcoin is much, much underestimated. And the movement goes strictly in this direction. And I think the people should realize what power would be possible with it. And with the DAO organization also, to combine wealth and money with democratic models of societies. And I think seasteading is an example of the ideas of this kind of concepts of new governments and new, maybe more open-minded governments, which not rules like the 19th century of the most governments at this moment. And I think that's maybe the first sign of the future, what Bitcoins represents. And I think that's a big amount of worth. And the people should realize that it has this component much more than it's at this moment seen. And you see in the reaction of the governments that they're very afraid of this. They don't tell, but they put it in the criminal corner because they know they are the criminals.
KYC AML laws are really just an excuse to know what everyone's spending on what.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
I believe we're at an identical situation as Argentina was in 2000. where they lost 77 times, not percent, times on their money. And if we don't have a warm standby for civilization itself, we're in a very bad situation. And the ones who saved themselves in Argentina were the ones who got into cryptos, because the government made the exchange rate into dollars an artificial rate that was not even close to the black market, the real rate that was in the streets, which was illegal. So imagine losing 77 times on your bank account. And I remember a grandma with a hammer, and there was thousands of people out in the street, and this old grandma, 90 years old, was smashing the bank windows because she had all of her savings in there and it was all gone, 77 times gone. So we're in an identical situation. I remember saying that to the Argentinians, and they laughed. They said, look at how good the economy is going. It's booming. There's inflation. And we're at that point right now. And so if we don't have a warm standby for civilization itself to swap into, we're in a very bad situation. We have to have that. And so we're going to repeat it if we don't.
Yes, thank you, Dwayne. Okay, so I want to make a few comments. We have about 8 minutes left of our scheduled time. So first of all, the Seasteading Institute has been accepting crypto donations probably since our founding. I think we were founded the same year that Bitcoin was going live. So I'm going to share a link to our profile where you can donate many different kinds of crypto, and I hope you will. Put that in the chat. You can also go to seasteading.org/donate, and if you scroll down, you'll find our widget where you can donate crypto. There's a ton of different cryptocurrencies. So the other thing I want to say, today's December 11th. It is the last day for the Radical Innovation Awards, and Ocean Builders with their CPOD is a finalist. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to visit their website. There are 3 professional finalists. I hope you will vote for Ocean Builders, but you can check them all out. Just added the link to the chat there. If you would, we had a very full chat, lots of really great links and resources. So if you did not register for this event on Eventbrite and you want to receive a copy of the chat in an email, give me your email address. You can send it directly to me. I got a question about Seastead Flags. No update yet. We will be launching our big program for 2022, somewhat related to flags, but we'll lay that all out early next year. And I think that's everything I had. I had a lot of things. So we just have a couple minutes left. It's open discussion. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for a great discussion. Good to hear from new people and longtime supporters and get a sense of your knowledge about cryptocurrency. A directory of active seasteading projects. Yes, you can go to seasteading.org/active projects, and I will put that in the chat as well. Any last comments, John and Mike?
I think the Seasteading Institute should look at the Gulf of Fonseca, which borders El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras. It's an ideal spot to have to put some of those sea pods or have some kind of a seastead sitting there, because right now with El Salvador being very favorable to Bitcoin, Honduras has their own ZEDE program going on right now. And that's, I don't know if Nicaragua has anything right now, but that'd be a nice spot to have a seat.
I think Honduras just elected a president who is not very happy with the ZED, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But so I wanted to answer a question in the chat about a seasteading token. At this time, we don't have a plan to create a seasteading token. However, I think this is the right group to ask. If anyone here would be interested in joining a volunteer group to kind of explore what it would take and start helping us build out a plan to create a seasteading token, I think it's a question worth exploring. So if you'd like to volunteer just to help us start developing that, please, you can email Carly at seasteading.org, or you can send your email to me privately in the chat here. That's something that we could consider. Also, that may be a good channel for our Discord server. So I'll share our Discord server link, and maybe we can start that conversation in Discord. Any last comments? Oh, I see another question. What became of Varion? So I think it was Chris who mentioned the ICO boom of 2017. Varion was part of that boom offered by Blue Frontiers, and the goal was to fund the floating island project in French Polynesia. So unfortunately, there was a huge crash in the crypto markets that year, and we weren't able to sell enough Varion to be able to start funding the floating island project. And then there was also some political issues happening in French Polynesia that kind of stalled that project. So that's what happened with Varion. Any other comments or questions? 3 minutes.
Thank you for hosting this, Carly. I hope we can have more events like this in the future.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that's a good reminder. Our next Seasteading Social will be a coffee talk. And so that coffee talk events are open for any kinds of discussion. If you want to come and ask questions or have ideas for a project, and or just want to talk about anything related to seasteading, join our coffee talk in January. Chris Rash posted about the Beyond the Bastards podcast, which I hesitated listening to for a long time. I'm slowly going through it now, and it is kind of interesting. So Beyond the Bastards has 2 episodes on seasteading. They have some interesting points, some just very annoying common misconceptions. People in the press tend to assume that we're all ideological idiots and don't think about these questions, when that's simply not true. We just don't always publish everything that we're talking about, especially like the intricacies of the legal aspects, or the risk of bringing on the wrath of neighboring countries. Yeah, there's some interest. It's a good self-reflection to listen to the critics on seasteading some of the time.
Can we get Patrick Freeman to come out and express his view?
His view on
with the seasteading for when it first started, but who's leading this? Who's giving the ideas in this whole organization?
So the Seasteading Institute's mission is to support projects, and if you go to our active projects page, we just added 3 new great projects. So it's great to see people in different parts of the world, some of them on this call now, collaborating together to start building seasteading projects. So our role is not to give a top-down management of building seasteads. We want to see what people can come up with, and also simply we just don't have the resources to do that right now. So helping and supporting projects that are existing, Ocean Builders, Arctide, FlexSpace, Atlas Island. Really excited to see these projects flourishing and starting to grow. Titus Gebel is our new chairman of the board, and Patri Friedman is still on the board, and he is working on funding FlexSpace. So if you go to our website, we have a blog post that describes in great detail the FlexSpace project, which is based in Singapore and the Netherlands, and Patri is doing some funding for that.
Yeah, he's trying to start the southern cities. So, where are the ideas? I'm really interested in the fundamental beliefs. I think this idea is better than his grandfather. Competing government is good. You see. So I'm sort of curious about where Seasteading is going. And also Dubai is building a ocean city. It seems to be way ahead of us. They have a whole city built. They should do the Seasteading. We should go talk to them. They have technology. So I'm just curious. Nothing that serious. But we are friends. It's curious. Why did he come out to? I'm here to talk. Why isn't he? I have more things to think about than he does. And he's working on this Seasteading. Seasteading, great. It's great. It's a really competing government. It's a great idea. I'm for that, and I hope we will be the best government. That's why I'm keeping raising critical questions.
Yes, so I appreciate that. We are at the end of our time, and Patri, Joe Quirk, we're all working, and and so having these conversations is great to try and bring in new people and work out different aspects of seasteading and see how we can move forward. So I thank everyone for joining today. Last chance now to give me your email address if you want to receive the chat via email, and I hope to see you next month at our coffee talk. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carly.
All right.